Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going mining because we're going to be taking a look at crystal mines on the NES. And no, this has nothing to do with Minecraft, this is actually an entirely different thing in case you haven't noticed already. And it was developed and published by Color Dreams and it was released in 1989. Now before we continue right along, all I have to say is that Color Dreams, well, for a lot of you out there that aren't familiar with them, all you gotta know is that they have made a lot of weird shit. I mean, this is the company that did turn into a religious gaming company called Wisdom Tree after all, who have made such classics as Bible Adventures, Super Noah's Ark 3D, and Sunday Fun Day, because, you know, everyone has to have a fun day Sunday. So anyways, this is an action puzzle game with some strategy into it, and it does kind of remind me of Dig Dug, not just because of the whole underground setting, but it just has that sort of feel to it. So before we talk about the gameplay, let's talk about the very little story that this game has. You take control of a CM205 mining robot, and you have to collect some things called Starla crystals on various planets, and well, that's really about it. So I think it's pretty obvious that this is the kind of game that you don't play for the story, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot of games on the NES that are like that anyways. So let's move on to the gameplay. And like I said before, the game does sort of remind me of Dig Dug, but not quite. But your main objective is to get all the crystals, and then when the exit appears, you just go right to it. And the game is in a top-down view, and there's a lot of squares of dirt that you have to shoot at to destroy it, just so you can clear a pathway. And there are rocks, but of course you can't shoot the rocks, instead you have to blow them up with dynamite. But if you have enough room, you can actually push the rocks, and you can make the rocks fall on the other monsters. Now, speaking of the monsters, I will want to say one quick thing right here, and that is that the monsters are supposed to be like these rock monsters, but I find they look like potato people. Now, when you shoot the dirt in this game, you can also shoot the enemies as well, but you can only kill the first kind of enemies that show up, because later on, other monsters will be unaffected by your shots. Now, there's a lot of obstacles that you have to avoid within this maze of, like, dirt and rocks and shit. But probably the number one most hazardous thing are the rocks, because you can actually crush yourself with them. So you really gotta use strategy of how to get the crystals sometimes, because a lot of the times the crystals will always be right underneath a rock or really close to a bunch of rocks. Because whenever a rock goes over a crystal, it always just goes up to the other side. So you gotta be real careful and use strategy. So that's why there's a lot of puzzle elements within this game. So it's a pretty simple arcade maze-like game that is very easy to understand, but very hard to master. Mostly because this game gets pretty tough later on, which I think is a good thing for this kind of game. So with that being said, the gameplay is very simple but works great. Now as for the controls, I find them to be very good. They're responsive, very easy to understand, and I really don't see how anyone could have an issue with them. And of course they work well for a very simple game like this. So really, I really don't have any problems with them at all, so overall, they're good. Now as for the game's graphics, they look alright. Now yes, it has the regular old plain black background, but it works for this kind of game mostly because you're underground and stuff. But the design of the robot they use looks pretty good, all the objects look fine, I mean at least you can tell what they are, and the monsters, well I already commented how they look like potatoes, but you know what, at least that makes it more funny. But you do get a screen that tells you what everything is, just in case you don't know what the hell something is, so at least there's that. So there's really nothing I can complain about the graphics. The only time I can see someone making a complaint about them is if they go on and on about how something needs to be like 180p or whatever the hell it is. But I'm pretty sure that the people that only care about that kind of shit probably don't even know about this game, so yeah, we never have to worry about them. Now as for the game's music, I think it's not that bad. Now it does repeat a lot and it can get annoying at times, but it does get stuck in my head and I do find it to be kinda catchy in a strange way. But I can understand someone not liking it, but as for me, I actually don't mind it. In fact, I can't even find any of the music on YouTube, which I found to be very weird, but oh well. So overall, I kinda like the music myself, but it isn't like the greatest thing ever, but it's also not the worst thing ever either. And one random thing I'd like to mention that I completely forgot about is that on the title screen, once it explains the story, at the bottom it says, Happy Mining. So you're pretty much telling me that if I'm going to be having a happy time while doing some mining work, I have to be chased by a bunch of potato people, getting crushed by a bunch of rocks, and of course, there's also blowing yourself up by a bunch of dynamite, because yes, this game is also like part Bomberman as well. Now, if you want to buy this game is going to cost maybe around $30 to $40, but if you're going to get a complete box copy, it can go up to like $200. Now, because whenever I do collect some NES games, I like to get them loose because, well, they work fine as they are, and they don't cost an arm and a leg. Well, at least depending on the game anyway. but $30 for this kind of game isn't too bad considering that, well, it's actually good. In fact, I believe that was the exact same price I paid when I got this game. Well, it is a little tricky to come by, or at least I don't see it around too often, but if you want to get a loose card of it, it shouldn't cost you too much. Now, if I were to rate this game, I'd have to give it an 8 out of 10. This game is actually pretty damn good, and very challenging, and very fun. And I know what you're all thinking, it's like, really? Color Dreams actually made a good game for once? And well, yeah, they did. This one's actually pretty good. But like I already said, it's a very easy to understand game, but it's also very challenging, and I really like that. So of course, for this game being like that and doing it very well, I think it's really good for that. So there's not a whole lot else I could say, but there is one thing that is interesting to say, and that is that they actually made a sequel to it called Crystal Mines 2, but it was released on the Atari Lynx. Which is pretty random, but maybe one day I might have to take a look at that one. And there is one thing I would like to mention that I actually found to be pretty amusing was that, did you know that Color Dreams actually planned on making a Hellraiser game based off the movie Hellraiser? Well, unfortunately, the game was cancelled, but it would have been interesting if it actually happened. I mean, Hellraiser is actually a pretty amusing movie. So I just wanted to mention that because, well, I only found it interesting, and I really had no idea when the hell else I would ever mention it. So I figured I might as well mention it here. Now, before I end the video, one thing I would like to say is that whenever you hear someone saying like, oh, Color Dreams, yeah, they suck. Well, you can actually tell them saying, yeah, well, they actually made a good game, and it was called Crystal Mines. And something else I'd like to say is that when the company Color Dreams turned into Wizardry, they actually rehashed the game Crystal Mines into 2 other games called Exodus, Journey to the Promised Land, and Joshua, which has that weird sound where it says, be courageous, Joshua. But of course it sounds very staticky, much like the Ghostbusters thing in Ghostbusters. It's like, Ghostbusters! But anyways, I always found it to be very amusing. So that's all I have to say about Crystal Mines on NES, and that it's actually a pretty fun game. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching and commenting.